Well, thank you very much. It is true that Mike and I have known each other a long time. I have a picture at my house of the two of us whitewater rafting in Colorado together, and we are in back, and the both of us, we had just hit a big wave, and the back of the boat has risen up, and Mike and I have these looks on our faces like, oh my God, what's happening? A few minutes after that, I went under the raft, and Mike and the guide on the raft grabbed my pants and pulled me back in the boat, and amazingly, my sunglasses and hat stayed on. So we have known each other a long time, and I think I'm sort of Mike's worst nightmare right now. I am in front of an open mic before an entire room of people. If you would like stories, I will be taking donations out in the lobby after we're done. I just want to tell you how much of a pleasure this is for me to be here tonight. I owe my life to a lot of people, and many people are sitting in this room, and a lot of us patients owe our lives to you. So I can't tell you how happy I am to be part of this evening and see a lot of people get recognized. I'm so grateful for the work you do. It's such an honor, and congratulations to all the nominees. In my opinion, if I was doing it, everybody gets something. Everybody would be a winner, because from a patient's perspective, the miracles that you create for patients and families every day don't go unnoticed. You are truly amazing and special people, and you should know that, and you should be proud of that. You are truly amazing in the fact that you make a difference in people's lives. I want to thank OHA, the board of directors, Mike, and others for having me here. Originally, when Mike asked me to do this, he said, well, we were considering asking Nick Foligno of the Columbus Blue Jackets to come. And much like I tell my wife, sorry about your luck, you're stuck with me tonight. It is an honor, and I know that you were blessed with a wonderful speaker in Nikki McCarthy last year, who told you her story of her husband and their family and their daughter Sam. I hope I can be 10% of what Nikki was for you last year tonight. I am going to talk about my journey at the Ross Heart Hospital. As Mike noted, I've always been a very fit guy. He mentioned the number of marathons I've run. I don't talk about that a lot, because when I do, people look at me like I'm from another planet, and it just proves, as I like to say, that my brother got the height, the looks, and the brains in my family. I was saved by a team. And when I mean team, I mean everybody. The doctors, the nurses, the PCAs, the people who came in and cleaned my room every day, the folks who brought me my food every day, the volunteers, the people who transported me to the many tests that I had to take in the hospital. Those people were part of the team that not only saved me, but helped me heal mentally and physically. My journey started, as Mike noted, back in 2011, when I really wasn't feeling right, and I ended up at the Ohio State University Ross Heart Hospital, and I saw an incredible cardiologist named Dr. Ray Magorian. I went in and saw Dr. Magorian. I told him what was going on. He ran some tests on me. It had a sort of look where, as Mike said, there might have been a little concern, and he scheduled me for some follow-up tests. I went to work that morning, and I went to have lunch with one of my dear colleagues, Courtney Saunders, who at the time was very pregnant, awaiting her first child. We went to lunch, and all of a sudden, I had all the symptoms that you could have of having a heart attack. I heard the ambulance coming, and quite frankly, I didn't know if it was for me or if I had sent Courtney into premature labor. I ended up at the end of a very long day back at Ohio State. They took me next day to the cardiac cath lab and came back and told me some not great news, that I had cardiomyopathy and I had extensive scarring on my left ventricle. Not exactly what you want to hear all the time. Now, if we jump ahead to 2015, this is where it starts to get rocky. But I will say, one of the great things that did happen to me in 2015 was, after, as I call it, 50 years of glorious bachelorhood, I married my wife, Emily. It's the greatest thing I've ever done in my life. It was then and it is to this day. Amazingly, she married me knowing I was sick, which, go figure. If you've seen me and seen her and met her and talked to her, you would probably realize that she went all in a Texas Hold'em poker game and lost and ended up with me. We are very good together, and Emily is 23 years younger than me, and I'm looking at all your faces out there. No, I did not have a midlife crisis, and instead of getting a red convertible, I married a younger woman. It's not like that at all. We work very well together, and if you've spent any time around us, you know how intertwined we are and how much we support each other. And let me tell you, just 4 or 5 months after we got married, that support and love was put to the test. Unfortunately, later in 2015, things got really rocky, and I started to go into congestive heart failure. And that's just never a great thing, but for somebody like me who was an athlete, that was even more difficult to take. I was in and out of emergency room visits at Ohio State. I was in and out of the hospital until one day an angel appeared in our life, and we tell her this every time we see her, Dr. Hassan, who's sitting down at my table. Emily and I and my sister-in-law Sharon were in the emergency room. They were taking loads of fluid off me, and all of a sudden the curtain got thrown back, and Dr. Hassan appeared in front of me and introduced herself, looked over my chart, looked over everything, and she said, what we're doing is not working here. I think it's time to put you on the transplant list. Now, that'll be a little cold water in the face for you. No matter where you are in your life, when someone tells you it's time to put you on a heart transplant list, that'll wake you up quickly. And that happened only about 5 months after Emily and I were married, so that's not what she signed up for, but that's what we had. But when I met Dr. Hassan, I actually felt emboldened and heartened by that, because in just the few minutes that I met her, I trusted her completely. I knew that she was going to put us on a path to achieve success in any way we could, and the journey got amped up after that. Once I was put on the transplant list, I was in and out, and they do various tests on you to make sure that you're a good selection for the transplant list. And finally, in mid-December, they had me come back to the hospital and do what we referred to affectionately as an extended stay, which was their way of saying they wanted to put me in the hospital because they needed to do some procedures to elevate me on the transplant list. That's good and bad, because as Mike noted, I became one of the sickest of the sick, but I had total confidence in that team. And let me tell you, it wasn't just the team. When I was in the hospital, it was the people who came in my room, the people who worked every day at the hospital, who came in and with a smile or a kind word really, really made themselves a part of my life and a part of Emily's life. We saw those people every day in a very tough time. And one of the reasons why you're so special is you see patients and families in our most vulnerable times. When we need you the most, you walk through those doors every day, and you have your own personal problems and your own family issues. And you put those all aside to come in and take care of us. You treat us like friends. You treat us like confidants, your advisors, your psychologists, and a lot of times your family, and you become family. So you need to know, sitting in those chairs, you save lives also, and you are very important parts of the healing process. I was the epitome of the old Nationwide commercial that says life comes at you fast. When I was on the transplant list, things went fast. And as Mike noted, in a very lucky stroke, a very fortunate and miraculous stroke. On Christmas Eve afternoon, the funny story I tell is that in my room, the landline rang 3 times, and neither one of us picked it up because really, who answers a landline anymore, right? Well, it turned out that was Dr. Hassan with a very important message for me, and one of her colleagues, Dr. Amani, who's an incredible part of my transplant team, came in, and as Mike noted, he said to us, "We have a heart for you." And let me tell you, when you hear those words, a lot of things come across your mind. We felt joy, we felt sorrow, we felt a little guilty, because as we all know, there are no living heart donors. My wife and I and our friends and family and everybody involved understood the gravity of that situation, that around Christmas time we were getting a miracle of life, but there was another family out there who this holiday will be forever changed, and we think about that every day. There's no doubt about that. And then it just becomes total chaos in a room, because everybody's coming in and they're turning off my pacemaker and they're doing all sorts of things. But the greatest thing I always remember was the people who worked with me, a lot of the PCAs who were on duty, who didn't have me as part of their rotation, who I got to know from walking, seeing them walk around the floor, came in. There were so many people who came in from food service and others that I got to know, who stuck their head in and said, "Hey, we heard the good news. We're really praying for you. We hope everything turns out well." I have to tell you, that means so much to me as a person. I still remember that every day, that those people, once the word spread out there, those people came in and they gave me their best wishes. And I can't tell you how much that means to me. And you do that for patients every day. You probably don't know it. You probably don't get told about it all the time, because we as patients sometimes are the worst people in saying thank you. Not that we don't feel it, but we've got so many other things going on. Sometimes we don't tell you thank you because you mean so much to us. I went into surgery then on Christmas Eve, and at about 1 or 1:30 in the morning, again, I was a little busy at this, so I'm doing it by recall. My surgeon, Dr. Brian Whitson, came out and saw Emily and my friends and family who were there and said, "Dan's new heart started beating on its own at 12:07 a.m. Merry Christmas." We talk about it all the time. We think about it all the time. I know another special person to me is Dr. Tom Ryan. Dr. Ryan was on the floor. As he does, he and some of his colleagues go around and with the nurses and others pass out fruit and cookies on Christmas Eve. Because, again, when you think of it, people are taking the time to work on Christmas Eve when they would be rather spending time with their family. That's a sacrifice that doesn't go unnoticed from a patient perspective, and you should know that. I want to share a couple brief examples with you about people, some of them funny, but who mean a lot to me, and I hope you will put yourself in their place, because I'm sure you mean to them what these people mean to me at Ohio State. First was my ICU nurse, Ruth. She was there when I got out of surgery and sort of was the first person when they took me back into my room. Ruth took charge, and I mean that in a great way. As my wife would say, Ruth ruled the roost. She directed things, and one of the things I recall is that Emily and my best friend Bill Burns were standing in my room looking at my heart rate monitor, and they saw a normal beat. Now, we hadn't seen that for a long time, and I know Ruth just came up behind them and sort of put her hands on their shoulders, and they looked at it together. And at that time, both Bill and Emily told me that it meant as much to Ruth as it meant to them to see that normal heartbeat. And Ruth had a way of working the room. When I was having a little trouble with some of the medications I had been given and was struggling, Emily and people were getting a little concerned, and Ruth just said, "When I start to worry, then you can start to worry." She was magnificent, and let me tell you what, when I first started to get up and walk down the hall, she knew what to say and when to say it. If I didn't want to walk, she'd go, "Oh, Mr. Marathon Boy can't walk another 200 feet. Yeah, Mr. Marathon Boy can't do another lap. If you want to quit, go ahead. If you're afraid, that's okay." She was great. It was like having Bobby Knight, except she didn't throw my walker away. And I'll tell you what, if I was preparing to go into a street fight, Ruth is my #1 draft choice. But she meant a lot to us. And you have to find humor in these situations, no matter how grave the situation. And I am recalled by a nurse, Jess was her name, and it's really also another team that really took care of me before the transplant. Now, as I told you, as part of the whole testing procedure to see if you're a good match for a transplant, I was 51. And of course, as you all know, when you're in the 50s, it's colonoscopy time. Not exactly a walk at the park. But I went down and got mine done, and from what I was told, when they brought me back, I was on one of those transport beds. And so they apparently said, "Mr. Leite, we're going to move you back to your bed." Now, I think I've got a pretty good sense of humor, but from what I've been told by personnel at the hospital, I am hilarious under anesthesia. So apparently, according to what I was told, was that when they said, "Mr. Leite, I'm getting ready to move you back to your bed," I had the hospital gown on, and I said, "Well, just make sure you cover my backside because my wife can get rather handsy." And she's going to kill me for telling that story. But what it was is after that, there were so many people around, and when people would come back to my room and I might not be feeling good, somebody, no matter if it was somebody cleaning the room or bring my food, would say, "Hey, Dan, how's Mrs. Hansy today?" That made me laugh. And those are the little things that you do every day that sometimes don't get recognized but mean the world to us as patients. And let me give you a couple other examples about special people before I wrap up. When I was told I was going for my surgery, one of the last things I did when they were wheeling me out of the room to go take me down to surgery was I had to take off my wedding ring and hand it to my wife of only about 5 months. That was tough because this is the thing I value the most in my life. It is my greatest prized possession. That was very difficult for the both of us because we hadn't been married that long, and I had total trust in Dr. Hassan and Dr. Ryan and my entire team, but you just never know what's going to happen, and that could have been the last time I ever got to see Emily. That was a very difficult thing. When they wheeled me out of the room and we went down to the first elevator, I was a little despondent, and when I get nervous, my leg shakes up and down. And the gentleman, and I wish I could remember his name, and I'm so sorry, who had transported me to some other tests was my transporter that evening. And he came around in front of me when we were waiting for the elevator, and he said, "Dan, are you really nervous? What's wrong? What can I do for you?" And I told him, I said, "Well, it was tough because we had just gotten married a couple months ago, and I had to take off my wedding ring and give it to her." And he put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, "Don't worry, my friend. She's holding it. She's giving you some special love, and it'll have healing powers when you get back to her." That made the world of difference to me, and I remember that moment to this day, and I will remember it for the rest of my life. That's a little miraculous thing that people like you do for patients every day. The final person I want to tell you about is one of my step-down nurses named Deanna Sparkplug. Love her to death. She's from Winnipeg, Canada. I'm a hockey guy. I love hockey. I love the Columbus Blue Jackets. I loved it since I was a little kid. Deanna and I bonded instantly over hockey. I would have the Blue Jackets on in my room before and after my transplant, and she would come in and she'd sneak away and she'd watch a few minutes of hockey and we'd talk hockey, and it was really great because those games and those kind of conversations took my mind off of what was going on before me, and that is so helpful. I can't overemphasize that to you. The friendship people show to patients make a difference in our lives every day. The night before I was supposed to go home, my wife and I adopt rescue dogs. We love rescue dogs, and our then 14-year-old lab named Chester decided to do a jailbreak from one of our neighbor's backyard and go take a walkabout around some neighborhood. And he decided to do it on a very cold evening and very late at night. And so Emily was in Cincinnati at a business dinner, and nobody could find him. Well, Deanna heard me talking about this and sat in my room, and she went and got every person working on that floor to come by my room every 10 minutes and ask how I was doing and if they had found Chester. And a lot of those people actually went online on their own personal devices and were checking various organizations to see if Chester had been found. I mean, that seems like a little thing, but it's not. If you have pets and one of them gets out and you care about your pets, it is a devastating thing. She did that. And the next morning when they were getting ready to leave, every person on that floor that had taken care of me the last few weeks, before the end of their shift in the morning, came in to say goodbye, and they held my hand, and it was like a little mini celebration. I will never forget Deanna or any of those people on that floor. I try and get back and visit them because they mean so much to me. I know Dr. Ryan and Dr. Hassan get tired of me every time I see them saying, "Thank you so much for saving my life." But sorry, I don't care. I'm here today because of people like them and people like you. And let me finish by telling you a little story. When I was a small boy, I drove my mother nuts because I was not only the why kid, I was like, that doesn't make sense to be mom kid. You know, that's somebody who's tough to deal with. And as Emily's over here nodding, going, "Oh, I'm shocked by that, Dan." But when we would, as I got older, we would talk, and she had a very good philosophy that you've had a great day if you've made a difference in somebody else's life. She said, it doesn't have to be some large, grandiose gesture. You don't have to change the world. You can just start by improving your little corner of the world. Let me tell you what, everybody that sits in this room tonight who interacts with patients and families, you create those miracles every day. And from the bottom of my heart, I just want to say thank you for doing that. You all saved my lives. You've had a great impact on my lives. And every patient you interact with, you have that same effect on them. And for that, I just wanted to say I'm so honored to be part of this evening, and thank you for all that you do.